Shocking reason Paul called himself a slave, you won't believe the truth until now. The town of Maplewood hadn't seen anything like it. The gossip was electric, buzzing like a swarm of bees. Paul's wild confession sent shockwaves through the community. People whispered in hushed tones, peering over their shoulders, as if the very walls had ears. A local man, an accountant by trade, standing in the shadow of his unassuming office, had just uttered the most outrageous truth, a truth that twisted the very notion of freedom. Paul stood in front of the cracked mirror in his tiny apartment, his hands trembling. His eyes reflected a raw, unsettling vulnerability. The reflection showed a man who felt trapped, shackled by invisible chains that dug into his spirit. He breathed heavily, the weight of the world pressing down on him. He had long faced the absurdities of life, the grind of a 9-to-5 job that felt more like a prison than a pathway to liberation. In the heart of Maplewood, he was known as an average guy, but inside, he carried a burden so heavy that it threatened to crush him. "Why do you call yourself a slave?" they asked with disbelief. But he didn't flinch. He explained, "I don't mean it literally. I mean, it's about feeling owned by a system that crushes your dreams." The crowd laughed, not understanding. Was it madness or a moment of clarity? For some, it was a revelation, a crack in the facade of normalcy. They exchanged wide-eyed glances, sensing an undercurrent of rebellion against their mundane existence. Margaret, a busy mom of 3, felt a lump form in her throat. Is it really so bad? She thought, her chest tight with sympathy and fear for this man bearing his soul. At the town diner, whispers swirled around Paul. People debated whether to see him as a hero or a fool. What if he is just trying to get attention? Some questioned. But was that really it? There was a magnetic pull to his story, something dark and undeniable that kept people glued to their seats. The tension in the room built like a coiled spring, every word hanging in the air like a heavy perfume, thick and intoxicating. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect." Just then, the air seemed to shift. The diner's door creaked open, and in strode a stranger cloaked in shadows. The atmosphere thickened as all eyes turned. Paul's expression morphed into something unrecognizable. Fear danced across his face as he whispered, "You're not supposed to be here." The crowd gasped, disbelief washing over them like a cold breeze. Who was this figure that sent chills racing down Paul's spine? Questions raced through the minds of everyone present. What secrets were buried deep within Paul's past? And what storm was about to break loose in Maplewood? The truth was near, yet eerily elusive. The stranger stepped forward, the dim light casting an eerie glow on his face, obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. He moved with a deliberate slowness, every step crunching on the linoleum floor like the ticking of a clock, counting down to an inevitable climax. "Paul," the stranger's voice cut through the noise, low and gravelly, sending a shiver down the spines of all who listened. "It's time to stop hiding." The air thickened with anticipation, breaths were held. Paul took a step back, the world around him fading into a blur. The whispers from the diner patrons morphed from curiosity to confusion, and someone whispered, "What does he mean?" "Stop hiding?" Paul echoed, his heart racing. "I'm not hiding from anyone." But the tremor in his voice betrayed him, he was fighting against the rising tide of fear and memory. "Do you really think you can outrun the past?" The stranger's eyes, dark and piercing, locked onto Paul's. "It's not just your life at stake." Panic flared in Paul's chest, he could feel the weight of every eye on him, judgment pressing down like a heavy yoke. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, gripping the edge of the table for support. "No. The word hung in the air like an open challenge, and the stranger leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that sent chills racing through Paul. You know exactly what I mean. You're still a part of it, the pact you made. Gasps rippled through the crowd, shock splintering the tension. Paul's face drained of color as he fought to hold back memories that clawed at him, desperate to break free. The pact. It was a term he hoped he'd be buried deep enough never to resurface. A youthful mistake, a desperate decision made out of a mix of naivety and desperation. Eyes widened around him as disbelief gave way to horror. Were whispers of his past true? The stranger wasn't just a shadow, he was a ghost rising from the ashes of Paul's buried past. Paul clutched the table, as if it could provide him refuge. No, it can't be. His voice trembled, panic flaring anew. You're lying. He wanted to scream, to deny it all. But something deep inside whispered that this time, the truth would not be denied. I could tell everyone, the stranger pressed, the threat thick in the air. You think you're not a slave? Who do you work for, really? Your dreams. The words hung over him, heavy yet familiar. Some in the diner cringed, others leaned in, enthralled by the unfolding drama. The crowd was a mix of emotions, pity rising within some, while anger flared in others. Someone murmured, "Is he really a slave?" "Stop!" Paul shouted, desperation clawing at his throat. "You don't know anything about me." But the stranger's smile was sinister, knowing. "Oh, but I do. And soon, they will too." The thought sent shockwaves through Paul, and he stood frozen, heart pounding, caught in the web of fate he had spun for himself. He glanced at the faces of the townspeople who suddenly looked like a jury, awaiting his fate. Then silence fell, thick and unnerving, as the stranger slowly reached into his coat. The flickering lights above seemed to dim further, as if the very room held its breath. Paul felt his pulse quicken, the weight of inevitability pressing against him, like the walls were closing in. Everyone was on edge, waiting for the truth to bleed into the light. With a shaking hand, the stranger revealed a worn piece of paper, a contract, faded yet unmistakable. Paul's heart sank. No, the end was near, and the truth was about to shatter everything. But would he confront it or let it consume him? What secrets lay in the shadows of that document? What would it expose about his life and the chains he had fought so hard to escape? And just like that, the diner became a battlefield of loyalty versus betrayal, truth versus illusion, and Paul stood in the path of the impending storm. Would he stand his ground, or would the weight of his past crush him entirely? The crowd's whispers grew louder, tension electrifying the air. Paul's fate was in the balance, and the next moment would seal his destiny. Would he dare snatch it from the jaws of despair? The diner was frozen in that moment, a snapshot of turmoil and uncertainty. Paul felt his breath quicken, the contract trembling in the stranger's hand like a signal flare in the dark night. What secrets lay within the creases of that paper? Would it ruin him, or was it the very key to his escape? "Let me see it," he demanded, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his insides. The crowd hovered, breaths collectively held, their eyes shifting between the contract and Paul's ashen face. Some were captivated, while others wore expressions of pity, as if they anticipated his collapse. The stranger stepped back, curling the paper into a fragile fist. "You want to see it? All right, but once you do, there's no turning back. This is your life, Paul. Your choices, laid bare." He could feel the weight of the accusations pressing against him, almost suffocating. "All right," Paul said, forcing strength into his words. "Let me see what you have." The moment that contract slipped from the stranger's fingers felt like the last grain of sand falling from an hourglass. As it unfolded, the litany of clauses etched in fading ink blurred into an angry swirl of words that he couldn't bear to read at first. Stars danced in his vision. Ah, the boy who thought he was free. The stranger's voice dripped like poison. "Do you see it? The price of freedom? You signed away your soul for those dreams you thought you could chase." The patrons gasped. Whispers mixed with the clattering of dishes as the atmosphere shifted from curiosity to shock. Paul grasped the edge of the table, nails digging into the wood for something solid amidst the storm brewing inside him. You think I chose this? That signing was a mistake I made years ago. His voice rose, shaking with bitterness as the memories flooded back. I was desperate. I wanted out of that life, and I thought this would be my salvation. Salvation? The stranger laughed harshly. Or a new prison. You traded one set of chains for another. Less visible, perhaps, but heavy enough to crush you the moment someone like me shows up. Eyes narrowed, Paul fought against the rising tide of shame suffocating him. It echoed of nights spent in silence, wrestling with guilt, and days hidden behind a mask of normalcy. Enough. He spat, the roar crashing against the walls of the diner. This isn't your show. You're nothing but a truth-teller, perhaps, the stranger interrupted, finally letting the contract drift gracefully onto the table, where it landed with an audible thud. Every person here deserves to know how you really became Paul, the man of their dreams. Or rather, the man of their nightmares. He turned back to the crowd, projecting his voice deep into the air. Will you all still cheer for him when you learn what lies behind that facade? When you discover he is still bound by the very dreams he chases? Stop! Someone shouted from the back, but their voice was lost in the chaotic tide of growing whispers and incredulous gasps. The questions loomed thick above Paul's head, forming a storm cloud of doubt. He glanced at the crowd. Were these people his friends or judges? Their faces flickered with intrigue and horror. What had this stranger known that they didn't? More importantly, what had Paul hidden from himself all this time? With a final sweep of the crowd, the stranger added, what will it take for you to confront your truth, Paul? A confession? Or are you willing to let the shackles win? He paused. The silence swallowed them. Paul felt their eyes on him, a jury of his own making. Would he dare to reveal the dark memory that danced just beyond reach? Was he ready to expose the scars and shackles that bound him more than the signed contract ever could? As he opened his mouth to respond, the diner's door burst open, a gust of icy wind rushing through the room, enveloping them all in sudden chill. And just outside that door, illuminated under the flickering neon lights, a figure loomed, casting an even larger shadow than the stranger's. Paul's heart skipped painfully, and for one heart-stopping moment, he faltered. Who was waiting just outside? What awaited him beyond the threshold? And could he truly break free from the identity he had worn too long like a second skin? The air hummed with expectancy, and Paul knew he couldn't hide anymore, but at what cost would the truth come? The figure at the door stepped inside, shaking off the cold, the jangling of the bell above announcing their arrival. Paul's breath hitched as he recognized the person staring back at him. It was a face he had long tried to forget, a ghost from a past that clawed at his insides. Jenny. Paul. She exclaimed, her voice cracking with a mixture of surprise and relief. For a moment, the noise of the diner faded into a hollow echo, swallowed by the enormity of that single word. Paul could barely process her presence. The crowd, still buzzing with anticipation, now split their gaze between him and Jenny, curiosity swirling like a storm. Why are you here? Paul managed to choke out. His hands trembled, the weight of unspoken words pressing against his throat. I came to find you, she said, taking a hesitant step forward, her worried eyes darting between the stranger and the contract lying like a serpent on the table. I've tried to reach you. We have to talk. The stranger smirked, taking a side step as if welcoming the unexpected intersection of the past with the present. Well. Seems like someone is here to push Paul toward the truth. You don't know what you're talking about, Paul snapped, pushing his chair back and standing tall. The fire was igniting within him, but he felt overwhelmed, exposed. Don't do this, please, Jenny urged, her voice trembling. You said you were done with it, that you wanted to break free. But I know you're still bound by it, the contract, all of it. The tension in the diner thickened. Every eye was now glued to the scene, and the murmur fell into an eerie silence. Paul felt something crack within him, an old wound opening as the truth threatened to spill out. The dreams he'd chased were laced with dark secrets, but so was his escape. Is that it? The stranger cut in, his tone taunting. A lover's plea for the man she thought she saved. Or a reminder that he's just as trapped as before. There was a collective intake of breath from the patrons. They were watching a play unfold before them, and Paul had become the star. "Shut up!" he shouted, the words bursting forth like a dam breaking. "You don't know anything about me." "No." The stranger retorted, leaning forward, eyes glinting. "Or maybe I know everything in you, Paul, just don't want to admit it." Paul glanced back at Jenny, pleading with her to see how much he wanted to erase the shadows of their shared past. But her expression was a mirror of concern. "Paul, you can't keep running from yourself," she insisted, her voice a lifeline amidst the chaos. "You've been stronger than this. You have the power to reclaim what that contract stole." Their eyes locked, and in that moment, Paul felt the shift, the weight of their history anchoring him to the ground. The doubt started fading slowly, replaced by a flicker of resolve. "Moments of darkness help shape you, yes," the stranger chimed in, "but they don't have to define you. It's time to decide. Are you ready to face who you really are?" The question hung in the air like a dare. Paul could hear his heart pounding, each beat a drum heralding the approach of a truth he had buried deep in the recesses of his soul. Was he truly ready to confront the reality hidden behind the facade? A shuffle echoed as someone in the crowd stood. "Tell us the truth, Paul." They cried out, fists clenched with anticipation. The room buzzed like a live wire. Paul turned to Jenny, a storm of emotions swirling within him. He could feel the eyes of the diner piercing through him, an electrifying force urging him forward, daring him to break the silence, a silence thick with the weight of his indecision. In that brief moment, he stood at the precipice of revelation. The truth hovered just beyond his lips, but the cost felt suffocatingly real. What would it mean to uncover the darkest parts of himself? Would the people he called friends still stand by him? He swallowed hard, silence hanging in the air like fog. But before he could spill the truth, a loud crash interrupted his thoughts. The diner door flew off its hinges, sending splintered wood scattering across the floor. A gang of rough-looking men barged in, eyes filled with rage, shouting his name. "Paul! Get out here!" Fear gripped him, his pulse racing as he realized the past was rushing to meet him, and this was only the beginning. What did they want? And would they shatter everything he had left if he didn't face them? A moment of truth was about to collide with chaos, and Paul felt the ground beneath him tremble as he looked toward Jenny, ready to grasp his fate. Would he run, or would he stand and confront the life he had built on lies? The air shifted, thick enough to cut with a knife. The gang's entry seemed to suck the warmth from the diner, faces pale with shock, and yet alive with curiosity. Paul's heart hammered in his chest as he felt the realities of his life closing in, each person staring at him like he was a loaded weapon, waiting to go off. "What do they want?" Jenny whispered, her voice trembling as she stepped closer, her hand brushing against his arm. The contact sent a jolt of warmth through him amidst the icy panic. He could feel her fear, almost taste it. "Stay behind me," he said, though he wasn't sure he had the strength to protect her. The men at the door were built like brick houses, tattoos snaking up their arms and necks. Their eyes gleamed with a dangerous glint, and in that moment, Paul's mind raced. Each wild thought pushed him toward the brink. Had they come to drag him back into the depths? It felt as if the walls themselves were closing in, echoing memories he tried to bury. "Paul! We know you're in there." Their leader stepped forward, a rugged man with a scar tracing his jaw. "You've got some debts to settle. Come on out, or we're bringing the pain to you." A collective gasp rippled through the diner. The other patrons shifted nervously, scanning the room for exits or safe corners. Paul's chest tightened as he fought to keep his composure. Each word was a reminder of the contract that still bound him, the very agreement he had thought he could escape. But it wasn't that simple, was it? Do they even know what they're after? Paul shot back, the defiance in his voice startling even him. You think you can just barge in here and intimidate me? The gang laughed, a deep, menacing sound that sent chills down his spine. You haven't been listening, Paul. You're not the man you think you are. You really want to keep pretending? Just like old times. The leader's tone dripped with disdain, as if taunting him to remember the past he wished to forget. Jenny's grip tightened around his wrist, grounding him. Paul, we have to get out of here, she urged, eyes wide with fear. They will hurt you if you don't go with them. But just as he was about to take a step back, a voice broke through the tension. Wait. A familiar face from the crowd emerged, a local named Lou. He had been a friend once, before Paul's life spiraled into chaos. You can't just take him. Yeah. And who's going to stop us? You. The leader sneered, taking a menacing step forward, but Lou didn't back down. The diner held its breath, hearts thumping, the tension palpable. Lou continued, you guys think you're here to collect? He's not your slave anymore. You can't. The leader's fist flew. The crack echoed as Lou slammed to the ground, the patrons recoiling in shock, murmurs filling the space. The gang didn't care. They viewed the diner like a battlefield, and each innocent life was collateral damage. Paul! Jenny shouted, her voice cutting through the panic. You can't let them take you. There's more at stake here. And just like that, clarity struck Paul. The past may have haunted him, but standing here, right now, he had a choice. He could either surrender to fear or embrace the chance to fight back for his own freedom, as well as Jenny's. Listen, Paul began, shaking off the paralyzing dread. You want something from me? I'm not that person anymore. I want to go back. The gang exchanged glances, confusion flickering over their faces. But it only lasted a moment before the leader stepped forward, fury blazing in his eyes. Fine. If you want to come with us, we'll just have to drag you out, kicking and screaming. Without a second thought, Paul turned to Jenny. We have to go. Now. But the door crashed open again, a new figure stepping in. A woman with piercing eyes and a determined stance. Stop right there. You're not taking anyone. The chaos surged, and Paul felt the floor tremble beneath him. The moment of decision was upon him, a turbulent storm ready to burst. Who was this new ally? Did she hold the keys to unlock the truth, or was she just another layer of danger in his already complicated life? As the room spun into chaos, Paul realized that every second counted. With everything on the line, his future, his freedom, it was time to make a stand. But against whom? And at what cost? Would this new arrival turn the tide, or would it plunge him further into darkness? In that moment, he knew, the battle for his life and his soul was just beginning. The woman stood firm, a striking figure against the backdrop of fear and confusion. Her steely gaze pierced through the chaos of the diner, intimidating and unshakable. Who the hell are you? The gang leader snarled, clearly taken aback by her sudden entrance. There was a beat of silence, a collective breath held tight in the air. Just someone who knows the truth, she replied, her voice steady. And knows that Paul is not a target for your pathetic threats. Paul's heart raced. Both relief and dread coursed through him. Could she really help? Or was she just another wild card in this unpredictable game? Get out of the way, lady. One of the gang members barked, muscles tense, ready to spring into action. This doesn't concern you. But the woman stepped forward, undeterred. No, it concerns everyone. You're not just wrecking a life, you're threatening the very fabric of this community. With a sharp glare, the gang leader stepped to the side, inspecting her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. You think you can talk your way out of this? Let's make it clear this is about Paul, and I'm not leaving without him. Paul felt a storm brewing inside him. She was risking everything, yet she stood there unflinchingly. Was it awe or desperation he felt? Maybe both. Paul. Jenny's voice sliced through his tumultuous thoughts. You can't let her take the fall for you. You need to understand what's at stake. They're dangerous. I am done being afraid. Paul shot back, the weight of Jenny's fear pressing against him like a physical force. He didn't know this woman, but there was something fiercely protective in her stance that beginning to awaken his own dormant courage. Paul. She called again, determination flaring in her eyes. If you care about your life and starting over, you need to think clearly. The risks shut up. The leader barked, his face twisting with rage. You'll regret stepping in here, little girl. The woman turned slightly, catching Paul's eye. Sometimes, fighting is the only way to reclaim what is yours. In that moment, everything around them seemed to dim. The sounds of the diner faded, enveloping them in their own bubble of tension. In those eyes, he saw a flicker of hope but also a warning, a desperate plea not to choose recklessly. Do you want to end up like Lou? She continued, her tone now laced with urgency, glancing at the fallen friend. The diner remained dead silent, all eyes fixed on the unfolding drama, the stakes palpable. Paul felt the world flip. Memories of the past intertwined with the present chaos, his debts, his failures, the people he wronged. He had spent so long running, pretending. But was he really ready to embrace power, or did he still want to hide within the shadows of his mistakes? A new thought sparked in his mind. What if we fight back? He vocalized, louder now, surprising even himself. What if we stand together? We can show them we won't be silenced anymore. A ripple of surprise washed over the patrons. Hope sparkled in some eyes, doubt appeared in others, but one thing was clear, a die had been cast. The leader laughed, a sinister sound that echoed against the walls. You want to stand up? You think your little crew can take us on? Good luck. We'll have the whole town shaking in their boots. We're not just a crew, the woman interjected, fire gleaming in her eyes. We're a force. And we won't go down without a fight. Suddenly, the atmosphere crackled with electricity, every heartbeat in the diner seemed to synchronize with the rising tension. As Paul locked eyes with Jenny and then the stranger, he knew the decision had been made. Yet doubt nagged at his conscience. What if this was the wrong choice? In that moment, the doorway creaked ominously as another figure emerged, an ally or an enemy. Paul's pulse raced again. This fight was just beginning, but was anyone equipped to grasp the true danger they were about to face? Chaos loomed on the horizon, and Paul could feel the shadows of his past stirring, poised to strike once more. What were they hiding, and what would it take to truly break free? The figure in the doorway stepped into the dim light of the diner. A low murmur of tension filled the space, and Paul's heart thudded loudly in his chest. He squinted, trying to make out the newcomer's features. Was it a friend? Or a harbinger of doom? Nick? The woman called, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. What are you doing here? Nick, Paul's old friend from high school, hesitated before responding, his expression uncertain. I heard something was going down. Thought I'd check in. He looked at Paul, confusion etched across his face. What's happening, man? The gang leader seized the moment, grinning maliciously. Oh, look who else decided to show up. A rescue party? How cute. His crew snickered behind him, their bravado dripping with contempt. Get out while you can, Nick, Paul urged, panic rising in his throat. The stakes had never been higher, and he didn't want his friend caught in this crossfire. Not a chance, Nick replied, stepping forward. I'm not leaving you here. We stand together, right? The room felt electric, a storm about to break. Paul felt a flicker of hope ignite within him but was quickly drowned by the weight of dread. Nick, you don't know what you're dealing with. Jenny shouted, her voice cracking. They're not just a gang. They're shut it. The gang leader roared. You want to save him? Try to get in my way, and you'll regret it. Then let us do this. Right here, right now. The woman declared defiantly, stepping slightly in front of Paul and Nick. Who's first? The gang leader's sneer turned serious. He nodded toward his crew. Show her what happens when you cross us. Before she had a chance to react, one of the gang members lunged. Time slowed as Paul watched the fight unfold, his breath hitching in his throat. The woman sidestepped, graceful as a dancer, and with a swift motion, countered the attack, taking the thug to the ground. Gasps filled the diner as the shock rippled through the crowd. Jenny turned to Paul, her eyes wide with fear and admiration. She's good, she whispered, awe dancing in her voice. But then, the tide turned. The gang leader, visibly enraged, barked orders, and within seconds, the fight escalated. More of them came forward, surrounded her, and Paul's heart raced with desperation. Was this what he wanted? It felt like a whirlwind, and he was at its center, struggling to hold on. Paul! Nick shouted, wrestling against the throng of chaos. We can't just sit here. He was right. They couldn't wait. This was their moment. A burst of adrenaline shot through Paul. He drew a deep breath, steeling himself. Let us fight. He shouted, steeling his resolve. The three of them charged together, their movements synchronized as they clashed against the gang. Paul felt alive, rage pulsing through him as he battled the memories of his past of feeling powerless, of being trapped in a life he didn't choose. Sparks flew as fists landed with precision. The diner's atmosphere shifted from icy fear to chaotic energy. Each moment stretched into a fight for their lives, for the freedom they longed for. But even as they engaged, shadows loomed within Paul, whispering doubts. In the heat of battle, he glimpsed the fallen figure of Lou, and those memories flooded back of debts, betrayal, and the chains of the past. Could he truly break those chains, or were they destined to drag him down once more? With a sudden movement, one of the gang members swung a chair at him. Paul dove aside, the sharp edge narrowly missing him. He hit the ground hard, breathless and gasping. The fight raged around him, but something shifted in his mind. This was no longer about survival, it was about reclaiming his own power. As they fought on, Paul caught sight of the woman and Nick, standing firm against the odds. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air. Someone had fallen. The diner froze, all eyes turning toward the source of the sound. What be you done? Paul shouted, heart sinking. But just as answers began to surface, the door blasted open with a thunderous crash, and a masked figure entered, weapon in hand. The diner erupted into chaos. Fear clawed at Paul's insides. Who was this new player? What did they want? The fight reached a new velocity, survival now intermingled with uncertainty. It was spiraling out of control, and the worst was yet to come. What connection did this masked figure have to the fight unfolding, and would it tip the scales to unthinkable consequences? The masked figure stepped further into the diner, the weight of the gun contrasting sharply against the chaos erupting just inside the threshold. Paul's heart raced as he struggled to make sense of the scene. Was this new arrival a friend, a foe, or something far worse? Stay down. The masked figure shouted, their voice muffled but commanding, sending shivers down spines. The gang froze momentarily, the power they once held now severed by the sudden arrival of this intruder. Jenny, eyes wide with fear, whispered urgently to Paul, "What do we do? What do we do?" Panic was palpable in her voice, but Paul barely registered her words. His focus was glued to the figure in front of him. They wore a black ski mask and a long coat, hiding any identifying features. Nick, muscles tense and ready, took a step forward. "No one has to die here," he shouted, trying to reason, but the masked figure moved with a swift fluidity, leveling the weapon toward Nick. "Shut your mouth. You don't know who you're dealing with," the voice shouted, an edge of desperation creeping in. Paul felt a sinking feeling in his gut. Things were spiraling out of control, and he couldn't shake the sense that this person had their own agenda, one that didn't necessarily align with theirs. He attempted to scan the room over the noise but saw just a tableau of fear and violence. The tension curled around him, as he fought to keep from drowning in it. Then the masked figure turned toward the gang leader, finger tightening on the gun's trigger. "You think you're untouchable? Tonight, you're going to wish you never set foot in this town." The diner erupted. Screams filled the air, thick with the acrid smell of fear and sweat. Paul snapped to attention, springing toward the figure. "What do you want?" he shouted, desperate to understand. "If you're here to help, then help." But before he could reach them, the gang leader yelled, "Don't listen. They're just trying to manipulate you." His crew shuffled nervously, unsure of who to trust in that suffocating moment. Suddenly, the masked figure shifted their weight and fired a shot, the deafening crack echoing through the diner like thunder. An errant bullet grazed Lou's fallen body, and another scream followed as a patron rushed to help. Shock swirled in Paul's chest. An innocent life was at stake. "No!" he cried out, staggering back, but the figure yell echoed off the walls like a death knell. The gang's bravado cracked. They pulled backward, uncertainty planting seeds of doubt into their ranks. Their leader, once so confident, now stared wide-eyed at the masked intruder. "You think you can take me down?" he screeched, taking a step back, but his bravado was gone, replaced by fear. Paul caught a glance at Nick and Jenny, their faces mirroring his horror as they grappled with what to do next. This was not just a fight for freedom, it was a fight for survival, with everyone moving like pawns on a violent chessboard. "Let us make a deal," the gang leader called out, his voice shaking. "You don't have to destroy everything." But the masked figure just laughed, a harsh sound devoid of warmth. "I'm not here to make deals. I'm here to settle scores." With every passing second, the stakes escalated. Paul felt his breath quickening, as though the very air in the room became charged. The game had shifted, and his heart pounded louder than ever. Just when it seemed that the confrontation would reach its climax, the masked figure abruptly turned away from the gang leader and pointed the gun directly toward Paul. "You think you're ready for this? You're about to find out exactly what kind of monster you're facing." The world shrank around Paul. What could that mean? He felt the weight of countless memories pressing down on him, the ghosts of his past suddenly demanding space in the present, and at that moment, a distant siren wailed, growing louder. Would it be too late? Would they have to confront not just the gang but this unsettling new force as well? The room held its breath, trapped in a fragile moment that threatened to snap. Were they ready to face the truth of their situation, or was this about to plunge into an even darker abyss? Paul's heart thundered in his chest as the masked figure took a step closer, gun glinting in the dim light of the diner. He could hear Jenny's whisper breaking, a muted call to his emotions. "Paul, please." Time slowed, stretching tight like a bowstring. The air was thick, each breath a struggle. The gun hovered between him and the masked figure, an unspoken challenge hanging in the balance. "Why me?" Paul found himself asking, voice trembling just as his body was. He needed answers, he needed to understand why he was suddenly at the center of this chaotic storm. "Because you're the key," the masked figure replied, voice low and threatening, almost mockingly. "You know more than you think. The past doesn't die easily, Paul." His stomach nodded. What did that even mean? His past was filled with shame and regret, moments he'd rather forget. But with every passing second, it felt as if those ghosts had come alive, swirling around him like a perverse dance. Nick dashed between Paul and the masked figure, arms raised in a placating gesture. "Wait. We can figure this out. You don't have to end it like this." But the masked figure's gaze remained locked on Paul, as if he were the only one who existed in that moment. "You need to decide whose side you're on. Are you with them? Or will you finally face the truth?" The gang was paralyzed, trapped between their leader's bravado and the awakening fear that festered among them. "What truth?" Paul pressed, voice rising in frustration. "What do you want from me?" The figure's laugh echoed, a cold, haunting sound. Everything. You think you can escape what this town has done to you? All those years you've hidden, it's time to confront it. He felt the weight of shame roll over him like a wave, a reminder of all those dark nights spent shackled by memories he'd rather lock away. I'm not that person anymore. Paul yelled back, desperation coloring each word. Are you sure? The figure sneered. Because the moment you raised your fist against them, the past came back knocking. It never really left. The sirens wailed closer, its blaring sound tussling with the chaos inside. A fleeting chance of rescue or a deeper descent into catastrophe? He couldn't tell that in a frantic attempt to regain control, their gang leader lunged forward, eyes wide and frenzied. You're just a coward under that mask. Who do you think you are? As tension crackled like static electricity, the masked figure flicked their gaze away from Paul and back to the leader, a sickening grin spreading beneath the mask. I'm your reckoning. And you thought you could bury the past? The sudden rasp of laughter earned the rattled eyes of every person in the diner. It pierced through Paul's heart, filling it with dread. The masked figure lowered their weapon, tone sharp. Tonight, the sins of this town will come to light. And Paul? You get to decide if you want to be the hero or just another casualty of your own making. Panic bubbled up in Paul. What did heroism even mean in a world gone so wrong? The pregnant silence between them was thick, almost palpable, as if tragedy rested on the edge of a razor. Then, something shifted. The air grew darker, tension mounting to a breaking point. The squeal of tires echoed outside, as frantic footsteps approached. Was it the cops or something worse? He looked at Jenny, fear etched into her features, then met Nick's steely gaze. They were his family, his lifeline. But facing the truth about who he was could cost them everything, and suddenly, the masked figure shouted, "Let us make this interesting, shall we?" With that, they turned, but not before one last soul-piercing declaration. You have until the last siren fades, Paul. Your past or your present, choose wisely. The fear that gripped him twisted tighter, but a flicker of defiance ignited in his chest. Was he really ready to let his past dictate his future? The decision loomed like a shadow, ready to swallow him whole. Did he dare confront the monster within before it consumed him? With sirens blaring like a malignant echo, the battle was just beginning. The diner stood in a tableau of fear and uncertainty. Paul felt his heart racing, a drum pounding in his chest against a backdrop of chaos. The masked figure had thrown down a gauntlet he couldn't ignore. Would he give in to the darkness of his past or rise defiantly against it? Paul. Jenny's voice broke through the cacophony, a lifeline in the storm. You have to make a choice. They'll drag you under if you let them. He nodded, acknowledging her fear but feeling the weight of his own. With the gang closing in and the masked figure shouting threats, there was no more hiding behind the lies he had woven. Enough. Paul bellowed, every ounce of past regret fueling his voice. He squared his shoulders and faced the masked figure. You say I'm the key, but you underestimate what I can choose to do. With adrenaline surging, Paul pushed past the fears that had shackled him for too long. I'm done with being shackled, whether by a contract or by memories. My dreams are not bought and sold. As he stepped forward, he could feel the crowd's gaze shift, an air of anticipation hanging thick like fog. His eyes locked with the masked figure, who reeled back slightly as if Paul's resolve had physical weight. You want the truth? I was afraid to look into the mirror. But I see clearly now. I am not just a victim. Gasps rippled through the diner. The masked figure's confidence faltered, confusion flickering beneath their disguise. You think speaking bravely changes anything? They snapped, voice losing some of its edge. Paul took another step. It changes everything. He locked eyes with Jenny, then Nick. Their fear mingled with growing hope, and that emboldened him further. And I'm not alone anymore. Unexpectedly, he felt a surge of unity from the diners. People started standing, back straightening with newfound courage, ready to support him. "We stand together," called Lou, still recovering but resolved. No more secrets, no more debts. Emerging strength coursed through the group. One by one, they united around Paul, shoulders aligned in solidarity against the threats they had faced for too long. The gang leader faltered, glancing at the masked figure with uncertainty. "This is madness." The gang leader roared, rallying his crew as the weight of the moment pressed down on everyone surrounding them. "You really think you can go against us?" But Paul's heart swelled with conviction. This was not just about him, it was about every person in the diner, every face that had witnessed the decay of their dreams and their lives. "You don't control us anymore." The masked figure's laugh was hollow, but their grip on the gun slipped slightly. "So be it, then." Suddenly, they aimed at the gang leader. "If you want to take the opportunity to walk away, then prepare to face your reckoning." Panic crested in the gang as they shifted nervously, unsure of their next move. With a sudden urgency, Paul lunged for the masked figure's arm, a desperate attempt to redirect their gaze. "No. Don't let violence rule this moment." Everything froze for a heartbeat, and then the sound erupted. Gunfire rang out, echoing like thunder, releasing a violent shudder through the diner. But it wasn't Paul who was hit. A figure fell in the chaos. One of the gang members had stepped forward in a blind rage, taking the shot instead of the gang leader, collapsing limply against the floor. The air thudded heavily with shock as confusion swept the room. The masked figure turned, realizing they had crossed a line that wouldn't let them walk back. "No!" They gasped, momentarily stripped of their bravado. Paul seized the moment. "This is it, everyone." The fire in his voice amplifying with every word. "We can change our lives right now. No more walking on eggshells, no more letting fear dictate our choices." More voices joined in the swell of defiance. "Together." They echoed. The gang, once proud and threatening, now floundered under their resolve. Suddenly, the entrance doors swung open and local law enforcement flooded in, sirens still blaring as the commanding presence of the officers washed over the diner like a cleansing tide. "Drop your weapons. Hands in the air." Their arrival broke the tumult, and the gang, now panic-stricken, melted away like shadows under blazing lights. The masked figure, too, faltered, the fight leaving their body as they dropped the gun, revealing a face that Paul, in his moment of triumph, recognized. "Alex?" he whispered in shock as the mask fell away, revealing the familiar features of an old acquaintance. Conflicted emotions swirled within him. "Paul," Alex breathed, desperation shaking that single word. "I didn't want it to end like this. We could have changed things, together. But the past was littered with scars and cost too great." Paul stood firm, the weight of truth heavy yet liberating. "That side of me is gone, Alex. You made your choice, now it's time to face the outcomes of that. Just like I will." As the officers moved in, a sense of resolution fell over Paul, Jenny, Nick, Lou, and all the rest. They were standing on the brink of a new beginning, no longer defined by their chains still wrecked by the past, but now ready to reclaim their futures. And as for Paul, the path ahead was not smooth, but it was his to navigate, bound by determination and the strength of his newfound allies. With a deep breath, he felt the shadows recede, leaving space for the light of hope to blaze. Sometimes the hardest battles lead to the greatest victories, and tonight, Paul embraced both in the warmth of the promise still left to fulfill. As the crowd slowly filtered out, some forming friendships, others resolving old grievances, Paul caught Jenny's eye and smiled, feeling a bond reform in the wake of their trial. And finally, for the first time, he felt free. This was just the beginning, and the world lay wide open before them, and just before the final exit, he turned back, heart racing with urgency. "Hey everyone!" he called, and they turned back, curiosity dancing in their eyes. "Remember this night. We're not alone in this anymore." The diner echoed with agreement. Now was not the time to hold back. This was his story, their story, and together they would never let it slip away again. And with that, they stepped into the night ready to embrace whatever came next. So, if you've enjoyed this wild journey with me, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and let the world know these stories matter. And don't forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about tonight's climax. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Let's build this amazing community together.